Hello there everyone and welcome back to more Battlefleet Gothic. I will admit I've been under the weather last weekend, so I was not able to get the matches I would have liked with the Imperial Navy fleet. With the cold and a little bit of a fever over that time, so I decided to take that break and I felt like it was really needed. But what I have in mind for the rest of my attempt with the Imperial Navy, I think I'm going to do 2 more videos with the 6 cruiser type of fleet to play around with it a bit and hopefully put an end to this losing streak we've kind of been suffering in the last few episodes. Hopefully they were still good matches to watch. They were definitely close and some of them down to the wire, so I'm hoping we succeeded on that front. But I'm going to do 2 more videos with this fleet, as I already hinted at, as we're face off against Drukhari, and then I'm going to end off Imperial Navy by playing a 6 dictator fleet. I know someone suggested to play like a carrier type of fleet, but I feel like dictators are probably the best. They're kind of the best on what you probably would get for a carrier fleet that synergizes with the strengths of the Imperial Navy, since their torpedoes are so damn impactful, especially with the melted torpedoes. But we'll leave that for when we actually play with the dictator fleet. In this case, we're dealing with a different kind of Drukhari fleet, where it's 1 battleship and 4 cruisers, I want to say. They kind of forfeit their frigates entirely to get access to that extra cruiser. I just can't remember if it was a light cruiser that's with the battleship or not, but the 3 ships on the right that I revealed, one of them is the 3 cruisers with torpedoes. And I'm going to try and be extra aggressive on them. I even gone so far with launching my beacon over to that point to at least kind of keep them back, keep them at bay, even though it's kind of unneeded since I already have vision of one of them, so I kind of can already put pressure on that subsection, or at least that fleet there. So in retrospect, I do wonder if it was a good choice putting that beacon there or not. I just know I don't have to worry about the battleship or the other ships on the left anytime soon, since they're basically on the other side of the map. And already, basically a minute into the match, I already been in engagement range with this fleet, so it works out well. It's just a question if I can get the critical hits or any kind of damage to stick, since I had a little bit of difficulty doing damage the last time I'd been playing with Drukhari. So with that said, they run off. I try and make a note to grab this 3rd point, while hopefully trying to put pressure on them. Hell, that's what this one frigate's supposed to be doing. Get a scanner pulse off so I can continue to hit the same cruiser I've been shooting at. And at the same time, get a little more aggressive with my frigates, since arguably, I want to say I was kind of passive in my match against the battleships, and I need to figure out how to get aggressive without compromising my position, especially when I have 3 points, keep in mind. But in this case, when I only have 2 points, I feel like I can get away with this pressure a bit. I'm just committing to a brace for impact and turning my heading to try and minimize these torpedoes, since my opponent does have the splinter torpedoes, which completely immobilizes my ships for about 5 seconds. Which I suppose isn't really a big deal, considering they burnt all the torpedoes and can't really follow up, since that's the main strength of the splinter torpedoes. You hit with just a single torpedo, the ship is a sitting duck for follow-up rounds if you can plan it properly. And that's where the torpedoes can do an absurd amount of damage in an instant, if you're able to connect. In this case, my opponent's getting really aggressive on these torpedoes at long range, and I get plenty of time to at least prepare for them. I'm likely going to take a little bit of damage here though, but scanner pulses are working out well for at least keeping pressure on them. It's just not lasting damage, which is kind of why I have the overlords to at least allow me to damage them while I'm chasing them, like I'm kind of doing right now. With 3 points, and frigates kind of watching my left side, and I can't remember if I used the... Okay, I was going to say if I used the beacon or not. I was wondering if I should have used the beacon over on the left, especially with that preemptive scanner pulse, to try and give me a little bit of assurance that there's no battleship or the rest of the fleets coming to support them. Because right now, With the engine just got damaged, I am kind of in a good position to pressure them.
Your orders?
Especially the main benefit of pinning these things down is to have them wedged into the corner of the map.
Your command.
So at least that way they're forced to go around me, and maybe I could do a little bit of boarding damage and heavy macro damage to maybe connect with some engine hits like we just seen. Sadly though, a stasis bomb and void matter cannon does slow me down enough, and with the convenience of this gas cloud, I kind of try and use it to maximize my damage. I do forfeit chasing the cruisers though, but I feel like this is a good trade for me, just for the amount of damage we're doing, even if the damage is pretty much spread out. I get the scanner pulses on the battleship. I take evasive maneuvers to try and dodge these and not get rammed. And what works out well here is they burnt all their mobility. My frigates are sadly going to die a humiliating death, but I'm going to try and capitalize on their lack of mobility here. Torpedoes are going to connect with this cruiser, obliterate it, and I'm going to see if I can cripple this battleship as quickly as possible. And I'm not making the same mistake as before. These are straight up damage torpedoes and not meltas, which may have very well cost me my last Drukhari match if you've been paying attention to the number of melta torpedoes that did nothing. So this is a very promising start. My opponent's kind of panicking, and the torpedoes are connecting really damn well. Sadly, I don't think the boarding damage is even going to be enough to kill off the third of this crew though. That's the main downside to doing all the boarding that I did. And sadly all my combustion gauge is burnt too, or at least almost completely spent, so I am going to have a difficult time pursuing them. And with no frigates, if I don't kill this battleship now, it may be free to just run away and keep itself hidden for the rest of this match. So I'm going to try and pursue it relentlessly with this one cruiser, split up my fleet a little bit to kind of harass all the other fleet, and hopefully just overwhelm my opponent. And thankfully, it works out well with the actual killing blow on the battleship. Mutiny is on this cruiser, so it's primed for a death in a moment, and it did lose its engines as a result of that mutiny. So 2 cruisers are pretty much down, I want to say. Never mind the fact I may have hit myself there. And then it's just a matter of revealing and hunting down these last few cruisers, which, like I hinted at before, if I can pin them in the core of the map, like what we're doing right now, this makes my life so much easier, and my opponent concedes. They were a little more aggressive than my last Drukhari opponent, and that is kind of why you need to play in a very cautious style, especially with cruisers that are a lot easier to destroy and damage their engines. Alright, match number 2, and we're face off against this high roller fella again. Although, this was at a completely different part of the day, so I'm a little bit shocked we encountered them again, since I do actively try to spread up my matches to at least get a little more diversity and different variety of opponents, so it doesn't seem like I'm just power leveling my ranking if I end up going up against someone that I can consistently win against. But in this case we're doing a Imperial Navy mirror match, so it's diverse, it's different enough, I'm hoping. And in this case they are going to be doing a bit of an odd fleet. Well, I think we encountered this kind of fleet before. It was a battleship, a couple of cruisers, and then a handful of light cruisers that are going to be flanking over on the right. It's going to be a different type of fleet, of course, since we don't normally see light cruisers all that often anyway. The only real exception might be Necrons when they're trying to utilize a very top-heavy type of fleet, or just a mass recall for their fleet to teleport in on me in a very aggressive manner. We don't otherwise see a lot of light cruisers. The sad truth is, and I've had a lot of luck with light cruisers early on in the release of Armada 2. Hell, my very first incarnation of the Imperial Navy fleet, which is kind of what I dub a more well-rounded type of fleet, since there's 12 different factions to go up against, I feel like it served me well. The light cruiser did some ridiculous stuff. Some stuff you never got to see on the YouTube video, like it stalked a Drukhari battleship for like half the match and was able to kind of fight it off. Although, it was a different time then. Opponents were definitely a lot less experienced, perhaps. But it was able to pull it off. It stalked a Drukhari battleship, and I'm sad it never made it onto a stream or something like that. Never mind the fact that it single-handedly allowed me to win and secure a bunch of objectives when my opponent was trying some weird stealth shenanigans as a Necron, which did make it onto a YouTube video. So I hope light cruisers make a return in some kind, whether it's an Armada 3 or some weird expansion that prompts a balance update of some kind. With that said, we are dealing with, like I said, battleship, couple of cruisers, and all the light cruisers and frigates are over on the right side. I apologize for the coffee there though. Still haven't quite recovered just yet. But I am going to adjust my positioning a little bit for the possibility of launching torpedoes on our fleet on the left to maybe do a little bit of damage to it before the engagement. Since sadly that's the one thing I've been doing terrible with, is trying to at least soften up or at least force my opponent into maneuvers they may not want to do as a result of just the additional amount of charges I have. Since you never know when melted torpedoes can be so impactful and close, so burning them carelessly early on, or even just the damaged torpedoes, can easily be a mistake. So this is what I have in mind, what I'm going to be trying to do with the Imperial Navy in the future. I'm just going to try and burn one salvo of dumbfire torpedoes and melted torpedoes through my means of staggering. So I get the reveal here. My fighters are sadly going to get shot down as a result of that. But it gives us some intel on these dictators, perhaps. So what I have in mind, although I believe my torpedoes are terribly angled a little bit here, I'm going to fire 2 melted torpedoes in the back, fire dumbfire in the front, and when I do my next torpedo salvo, I'm going to switch it around. Melters are on the front group, and then the dumbfire torpedoes on the back. And at least that way, I am able to keep 2 charges of both torpedoes available. Although, I did not account for the heading the best. I completely was blind to the fact that it might have went to the objective for some weird reason, and I aimed directly at the fleet as opposed to where they might have been likely to go. So torpedoes are a complete whiff, and never mind, they were tight enough arc that they could have probably just boosted out of the way, truth be told. Either way, I caught on to the fact that the objective on the right was captured really quickly. So I'm going there expecting a lot of frigates or light cruisers to await me, which is kind of already apparent by the fact we only see 3 ships on the left. So I'm going to be using a frigate to try and scanner pulse. I'll launch fighters to kind of help give me some early warning to avoid getting my frigate sniped. And I'm going to try and soften up these guys. Although, I wasn't expecting to detect the frigates here, of all things. But it works out for me, if only slightly. Now, I'm going to scanner pulse here in a moment, since I'm not quite convinced if that's everything yet. Going to try and keep the Cobra alive. And do what damage I can. And we're going to fly completely right in front of these Dauntlesses. These are the ones with the lances at that, but this works out well for me. Maybe not the best arc for torpedoes, but I am going to get some really good ramming damage in. As a bit of a consolation. It's just hard to tell how much I'm ramming myself in the process. Just because of all these health bars are kind of clumping up together. But I'm getting shots on the ships. We're ramming these Dauntlesses into oblivion really damn quickly. And the boarding on this last Dauntless is going to be really crippled. So already, it did cost about half my health on one of my cruisers, but we basically took out 3 Dauntlesses in a hurry there. Especially with this mutiny and the deck destruction. So now we have to deal with a battleship, a couple torpedoes, and I don't recall what their upgrades were, if they have armor piercing or not, so they could still be a threat in close if I'm not careful. And again, the heading's not the best for launching torpedoes anyway a lot of the time. As made apparent by the fact that I only hit with 3 torpedoes in that exchange. But I'm going to go in for ramming. My one cruiser is going to ram everything basically. Sadly, it will be ramming only the prow, so the damage it does is very minimal compared to what it could have done in that exchange. And again, torpedoes are not the best connections, but they were meltas this time, so they're a lot more impactful as a result. And hopefully, if I can ram this battleship into the other cruiser like the Rogue One style, this would be a nice treat. Sadly, I think I ran a combustion gauge or didn't commit fully to it, since there's a lot of management to do. And I'm trying to kill off this cruiser before too much damage is dealt to me. Since one torpedo salvo and a good ram is all I need, but sadly, burnt all my combustion gauge. And I'm trying to get a good heading to finish this thing off. So what I do instead, the cruiser that is about to die, gets its last hurrah. Its final moments is at least forcing the mutiny on the ship. It is a quick and brutal match, especially with these plasma bombs actually doing good damage to me. It was brutal. It actually looks really damn close, I won't lie, with about 2 of my ships about to fall apart on me. But it was a slugfest, despite the fact I destroyed like 300, 400 points of their fleet almost for free, it seems like. I still had to put a lot of effort in to make sure it didn't fall apart on me. But let's move on to a new opponent this time around. Alright, now we're going to get something different. We're going to have 2 more matches to enjoy with different adversaries. In this case, we're dealing with Arc Propagator Necron with double battle cruisers, I believe, a battleship, and a light cruiser with the mass recall shenanigans, although I can't quite remember if the points allow for 2 battle cruisers or not, so it's possible they may have downgraded to a cruiser of some kind, and are making use of their lances. Either way, it's 2 cruisers, a battleship, and then a light cruiser that will be hiding for what I already mentioned. Although they're going to be using it more for preserving their fleet, which is kind of what I like. I approve this tactic a little bit, since after all, I honestly do feel you don't really need to play super aggressive with Necrons to win, mainly because their weapons are always accurate anyway, and will always connect, that you don't really need to get in close. You should be probably trying to force your opponent to be aggressive, burn their combustion gauge, burn their mobility, and then when you have the inertial drive to get like a better position on them, then maybe you can get aggressive with your Scarab Swarm, your Tesseract Bolt, or other abilities if it encourages it. Otherwise, you're just hindering your ability to dodge torpedoes, evade bombers, or any of the other heavy damage abilities that they could throw at you. So I honestly believe that Necrons are doing themselves a little bit of disservice by getting super aggressive with the mass recall and just jumping in general, I feel like. Especially if I'm super strict about spraying out my fleet too, which is something I didn't really factor in here the best. If they jump in there and do a Scarab Swarm, I'm probably way too close to do effective torpedo runs in a very swift and effective manner. Which is something I do need to get my head crammed in to be a little more diligent about. Because if the Scarab Swarm's only hitting 1 or 2 ships, then it's not really getting its value in, as opposed to like a Tesseract Bolt, if I were to be honest. Especially with enough combustion gauge to eventually get out of range to avoid the damage entirely. And torpedoes are probably pretty damn essential for Imperial Navy anyway, for winning against Necrons. So what I'm going to be trying to do is just burn my melted torpedoes and maybe force off some Star Pulse generators on my opponent. Although, I realize immediately that this torpedo salvo is a terrible shot. just because the debris is in the way.
Setting course.
So I immediately fire a second salvo, try and prompt Star Pulse Generator, although the torpedoes again are a terrible angle and are not really going to do any damage. And being mindful of possible scourges, I recall this immediately upon seeing the cruisers. And yeah, it looks like one of them at least is a cruiser.
Aye, Admiral.
So I witness the Arc Propagator, the Tesseract Crypt for whatever reason is also a upgrade to have on there.
Your orders?
Which is a bit of an odd upgrade when dealing with someone with shields, since
Ship ready.
your weaponry can't shoot as far as your lightning strikes now with that upgrade, so it always seems weird having that. But more melted torpedoes being staggered. This time they are going to prompt some kind of response, and with the scanner pulse, they're not going to be hiding from me anytime soon. So I got a lot of free damage in. Sadly, I didn't stagger the torpedoes the best, but they did do their job.
We wait your command.
They forced at least one of the Star Pulse generators to go off, at least as a precaution. And keep in mind, Necron are immune to fire assault, so my melted torpedoes are kind of completely useless. But now I'm going to start firing a couple of actual damaged torpedoes in to try and take advantage of the cooldown.
We wait your command.
I can't remember if that second salvo was actual damaged torpedoes or meltas. But it does its thing. It prompts a second Star Pulse generator. I think I might get a little bit of hits in here. Nope. The point defense just barely shoot them down.
We serve.
And so far doing some decent damage. I missed with the plasma bombs, the only downside, but it's decent damage for quite literally for free there. I did burn a couple of charges of my melted torpedoes, but like I said already, they are unnecessary. They don't really contribute much in this fight. So burning Star Pulse generators is the best I could ask for. I just couldn't remember if those were also meltas though.
Enemy sighted.
And they're doing pretty well shooting down my torpedoes, I won't lie, but finally I get a connection. 200 health is burnt away on the tomb ship. And Disruption Bomb's supposed to add a little bit of positive their regeneration. Which honestly is not a lot of damage, but it's there nonetheless. Now, time to get super aggressive. It's going to be really hard to focus my damage as much as I like. But we are connecting pretty damn well. And it won't be long till these things die if I can get another ram or torpedo salvo in. But this is what prompts the mass recall. We nearly killed one of the cruisers off. I sadly have no means to recover the crew on this one cruiser. So it's going to lose 2/3 of its crew complement by the time that boarding's done. But thankfully my opponent did not prioritize the engines, so it's not actually going to lose its engines by the time that's all done. So it's still combat ready, thankfully. It just needs to wait till it repairs. Now, they are regenerating health there, which is a big factor, because that can very easily undo a lot of the damage I just did in this exchange.
We wait your command.
But I still want to say this was a really good exchange for me. One of my cruisers will be operational once the emergency repairs comes back up. I didn't really do anything about its morale last, so that may be a factor. But all my ships are still combat ready, still basically at full health, with very light damage to them. And with one more plasma bomb, I could kill this cruiser off really quickly. Since it currently, with its deck down, doesn't have the reactive hull shift, which is kind of the key upgrade you want, is the Tesseract Crypt, to be able to allow to keep your stances up, since they kind of are really damn important and impactful for Necrons. And once my opponent prompts this jump sequence, I go in for the aggressive kill. At least I try to. I'm going to use a plasma bomb with my flagship since it's the closest one in right now. And I'm hoping to kill this cruiser quickly. Especially with the lance as a complement. So it currently has 200 health left. It's taking lance fire. That cruiser thankfully is dead. The last charge pays off well. And upon realizing I do notice that their Tesseract Crypt is not effective, I just prioritize the light cruiser to at least keep it from solid running or doing anything sneaky. Never mind the extra that has the Admiral abilities available to it too. And with his deck already temporarily destroyed or damaged, I'm gonna try and take what shots I can. Sadly, the Arc Propagator works amazingly there. They just permanently destroyed both my decks at once in that last salvo. And surprisingly, the fighters destroy, the fighters prompt a Star Pulse generator, which is kind of really convenient for me. It's still a full health tomb ship, alas, so there's still a lot of work to be done. But this thing is almost a sitting duck right now if I can hit with torpedoes. They just may not be the best torpedo shots. But they connect amazingly, I gotta say. Never mind the morale we just took. This tomb ship literally took almost 2/3 of its health before even getting in ramming range. And that is the threat of the torpedoes. That is why the Star Pulse generator is so damn important for the Necrons. To not use them carelessly like that. And as a result, before we suffer too much attrition damage, the flagship's gone, and I'm just gonna try and ram everything to oblivion. Although sadly I did burn all my combustion gauge, which is a little bit awkward. And I don't think I have a rally available for this Mutiny Eater. And the Scarab Swarm is still doing amazing damage, so we can't be, I need to try and kill it quickly. Although thankfully, my opponent jumping away actually helps me in this regard. I get to avoid all that damage that I was taking, because keep in mind, I got into that fight relatively at full health outside of the crew on one of my cruisers. And already half my fleet is basically at half health. This battle is thankfully already over with the flagship kind of fleeing with his deck down. So I don't have to worry about this snowballing out of control, thankfully. And armor-piercing rounds do help to ensure the killing blow. So I like to think that was a good series of exchange. The problem is, of course, is trying to get all my cruisers to connect with a single ship, so maybe I can kill it quickly. Because there was an opportunity to kill that cruiser before the mass recall earlier on, and that would have been a huge boon for me. Alright, we have one more match ahead of us with more Necrons. And I can't honestly remember what this fleet consisted of. Although I think it's very similar to what my other opponent had, they just don't have access to the mass recall this time around. But it's more Necrons, and I definitely gotta take them very damn seriously. Because the damage output they can do, especially AoE wise, can be quite impactful, especially since Necron are kind of the only faction that can turn their lightning arcs, their macro weaponry, into an actual AoE weapon as well. So AoE damage is not a terrible strategy to try and win through attrition. It just may seem like an odd way to approach because of what I already said before. I don't feel like Necron are at their strongest when they're getting super aggressive, unless their opponent burnt all their mobility and their utility to try and get in close and aggressive, in which case, your opponent's just making it easy for you because then you have the inertial drive still available to you if you need to reposition or even just run away. Which I don't think is really a bad thing. It benefits Necron more that way, just because again, they have 100% accuracy with all their weaponry, so why not try to take advantage of that fact if you feel your opponent is going to do the aggression for you. Either way, this is going to be more the same, I believe, just battleship and a couple of cruisers. Can't honestly remember if there was a light cruiser or not, but It's more of the same, more of the raw power that they're bringing to us there. And destroying the deck is always helpful,
Aye, Admiral.
since it turns off their Star Pulse generator,
Heading
if I
acknowledged.
can at least get a damage result of some kind on that
We wait
deck.
your command.
So it makes my power that much more useful. And of course, destroying the engines, if I
Changing course.
feel like it or get lucky enough, will also disable their inertialist drive, which can be helpful for pinning them in place.
Setting course.
Never mind hurting their mobility and kind of isolating one of the Necron ships over time.
Underway.
But the strategy is going to stay the same.
Your orders.
I apologize
Course
there.
engaged.
Now, what was I saying? Yeah, the strategy is going to be the same. I'm going to try and prompt a couple of melted torpedoes to
Aye, Admiral.
at least maybe intimidate my opponent a bit, and hopefully, if I'm lucky enough, burn a couple of Star Pulse generators. Although,
Understood.
there may be enough time for them that they can recharge the Star Pulse generator
Enemy sighted.
before I can really follow up with torpedoes the best.
The enemy has seized a strategic area. You have
But
seized a strategic
I'm hoping to
area.
maybe reveal a second cruiser. It's not needed, or at least I just recall it back for safety. And I at least get to save the fighter squadron. Now I'm just watching to see if my opponent will Star Pulse generator or not.
Aye, Admiral.
They either are not intimidated, but they do prompt the jump of some kind at least. Which is probably the best I could honestly ask for,
Enemy sighted.
because this gas cloud is not safe for them. And with macro cannon and a couple of
Your
lances,
command.
again I get myself a little bit of free
Setting
damage in.
course.
If only a little bit.
We serve.
I am just completely oblivious that they have the Dispersed Lightning Arc stance up, so they can do a lot of AoE damage here. I did not really consider it the most. I was kind of just keeping an eye on if they had reactive hull ship up or not. Since Necron only really has 3 stances.
All ahead, full.
And I can't remember if that was a dumbfire torpedo, but I wasn't honestly expected to hit
The
anything, but
enemy has seized a strategic
the Star Pulse
area.
generator works out nicely in this exchange.
Setting course.
And with them burning all their utility and mobility,
Ship ready.
it's like I said, I now have a window to kind of do some extra damage to them. And the Plasma Bomb connects well as a result. Disruption Bomb is not really all that impactful here, since I think really will only stop them from regenerating 50 health. And again, this is another situation where I'm probably too clumped up for my own good. Because I would like to have my squadrons kind of in waves, or my fleet in waves, in case there was a Scarab Swarm for me to take damage from.
Engaging engines.
But I think I hit myself with torpedoes there, but we hit more on the tomb ship. And the stasis bomb does isolate my fleet a tiny bit.
Enemy sighted.
So I am sadly going to be splitting up my damage a little bit here. But armor piercing rounds and the amount of damage that we just did to this cruiser is making up for it quickly.
We serve.
And keep in mind, these things, while they do have Dispersed Lightning Arc,
Starhawks loaded.
and a neat little trick with that is, if multiple ships are behind one of the ships you're attacking,
Underway.
they're basically taking like a double or triple damage potentially,
Orders.
based on how many extra shots you would probably get.
Underway.
And I think it may be what's happening here to an extent with this tomb ship.
Your command.
But it is crippled. Sadly, my engines are also down, so I can't follow up with the ram I would like.
The battle is lost.
But I do have a rally to at least get some mutiny in here, or at least deal with it.
We serve.
It's just a very awkward engagement right now, with 2 of my ships limping in. Not really able to do the damage they want. But
Bulkheads
this
failing.
cruiser is thankfully going to go down, finally. The battleship is primed to get killed, but I don't have a lot of combustion gauge, let alone a good positioning left. Especially if my torpedo's still on cooldown.
Possible, Admiral.
So I'm going to have this one limping cruiser, or at least one cruiser lagging behind, to try and get the killing blow.
Coordinates acknowledged.
Especially with the deck damaged.
We wait your command.
The follow-up of potential ramming and torpedoes is going to hopefully kill this thing off.
Changing course.
But I'm not going to lie, this feels a lot closer than the last match. just because of the dispersed lightning arc and all the AoE damage they've been trying to do.
Orders.
If they had Scarab Swarm, it's possible this could have been a loss for me there. It's feeling like that for me.
Engaging engines.
Although, again, it prompts why I should be trying to spread out my fleet a little bit more preemptively to at least help minimize that damage
Engines.
and allow so many more potential ramming and torpedo attempts when they jump in like that. At least it's a good countermeasure, even though I don't really agree with it. Since again, you've seen what happened. They burn their mobility, they burn their star pulse generators, and then are free to get super aggressive on them.